Welcome to Inspire Campfire, a podcast where ordinary people tell their stories of extraordinary adventure. These are campfire stories meant to inspire the rest of us to light the fire within, get outside, follow our dreams, and return to tell our own stories. Ready? Let's strike the match.
Welcome to the show. I'm your host, Scott Wurzbacher, and today we're talking about the power of taking a pause early in life, not to fall behind, but to gain clarity about who you are and what you want. In other words, the gap year. In the United States, the traditional path, graduate high school, head straight to college, then chase a good job, still dominates. But in places like Europe and Australia, it's common for young people to step away first, using that time to travel, work, or simply grow into independence. More and more students here are realizing that this intentional pause can be an accelerator, helping them make better choices, pursue passions with purpose, and ultimately live with greater fulfillment. Our guest today, Austin Whitehead from Salt Lake City, Utah, faced that decision 15 years ago. Unsure of what he wanted after high school, he chose a gap year, during which he hiked through the Appalachian Trail, traveled to Italy, among other things, and that year was a total game changer for him. Today, Austin lives his dream. He's worked at backcountry.com, surrounded by the landscapes he loves, blending career and passion in the outdoors. And he's here to share how one deliberate pause has shaped the course of his life. Austin, welcome to the campfire.
Thanks, Scott. Good to be here.
Man, I'm so excited to have this conversation because I just think, your life has unfolded for you and it all kind of comes back to this, this curiosity that you had all those years ago and, really listening to your inner compass, which is pretty amazing for a young person.
Yeah. It felt like a real turning point, and those experiences on that year definitely shaped kind of my whole trajectory, it feels like. So.
Yeah, I love it. So it was something like 15 years ago. And you were feeling this conflict about following the traditional path over graduating high school and going to college. And you made the decision to take the gap year. So I think for listeners, I'd love to just kind of start there. Can you walk us through this decision that you made when you graduated from high school?
Yeah. I grew up in the Cotswold area of Charlotte. So pretty standard suburban Charlotte, went to Myers Park High School. Was kind of feeling disillusioned with how laid out the steps felt. Graduate college or graduate high school, you go to college. It felt like, I was eager to just get into more of the real world, quote unquote. I did a lot of reading in high school, read like Kerouac and Into the Wild by Krakauer, and eager to put some experiences under my belt. And the Appalachian Trail was a big part of that as well. Reading memoirs of people that had done it. At that time, White Blaze was the Appalachian Trail forum that I was always on. So I'm getting inspired by those people as well.
Yeah, I love it. So help us understand sort of that decision-making process. I mean, did you experience any resistance from anybody around you in terms of this not being the usual path?
Yeah, definitely. Had to convince the parents, get them on board, which took a little bit of time. But ultimately, I went ahead and got admitted to college and then just deferred my admission. So I think that was a good part of lessening their concerns. And then they, wanted to make sure that, we had an expectation. This was not a year just to laze around on the couch, but that had some goals and kind of structure attached to it as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's definitely a key distinction to have some goals that you're planning to face during the course of that year. But, I can understand the trepidation, from the side of parents that are, wanting the best for their kids and, kind of growing up in this culture where we're just, it's almost sort of expected to sort of follow this path. And you mentioned that convincing your parents was one of the hardest parts. Can you talk about that?
Yeah. I mean, I think that, a lot of parents, they have expectations of their kids, they are part of that same kind of dominant culture where they want to see their kids graduate high school and then be successful in college and then be successful in the workplace. And deviation from that, like, is scary, right? Like for anybody. But they were, to their credit, pretty open to it. And I was the oldest child growing up in the household, and it was enough of a success for them that my sister also took a gap year.
Oh, nice. Okay.
At Pheasant Stage, the groundwork those oldest kids have to do, and then she got the easier sign off for sure.
That's amazing. So what sort of things did you have to do to, as you said, get the sign off?
It was definitely like, we still applied to college, still deferred my admission. So I was admitted student. There was every intention that I was going to go to school after the fact. I can remember a PowerPoint presentation. It was a lots of steps, I guess.
A PowerPoint presentation. I love it. Give us an overview. What were some of the things in the PowerPoint?
I think I had definitely pulled some research from like other countries where gap years are more common.
Yeah.
I was, part of it was that I just wasn't really sure that I wanted to go to college, but I was sure that I wanted to hike the Appalachian Trail. So I think that, like, hey, like, I don't know what I want to study. I don't know what I want to do. But I know I want to do this thing, and I can start doing it right away. So there was a piece of like my internal goals kind of matching up with the gap year.
Yes.
And it ended up actually working really well, because I was, as a suburban high school kid, like, I was really eager to get out of the South, get out of the Southeast, and kind of spread my wings. So I'd only looked at out-of-state schools, because I felt like I needed to make that break. The gap year kind of ended up serving as that initial break for me. And I ended up graduating from UNC Chapel Hill, which in the long term for them, I stayed closer longer. So
yes,
I think they won out.
Terrific school. I'm representing today. Love it. That's amazing. And you know what? You said something that just like, and you're speaking my language, and you're speaking directly to what this podcast is all about. So I heard you say you weren't sure that you wanted to go to college. You were sure you wanted to hike the Appalachian Trail.
Totally.
And so what this podcast is all about is listening to the voice inside that calls us to adventure. And that could be college for some people. It could be something entirely different for you. It was the Appalachian Trail, and you knew that that's what you wanted to do. So I wonder, like, because I love exploring this a little bit. Can you talk about that knowing? How you knew you wanted to hike the Appalachian Trail? Like, what was it inside of you that was giving you that sure feeling?
Yeah, I think it was kind of at that time, it was like an impulse to like prove some sort of self-reliance. And there was like a proving that I felt really attached to it. It felt like a way to see and understand the country in a way that I think I had like a pretty limited perspective, but and to this day, I'm like, I'm not sure there's a better way to understand the scale of our country than to walk across it or to bike across it, or lengthwise. And then, I was a bookworm in high school and read, different memoirs of people hiking the Appalachian Trail. The one that really stood out to me, or that I treasured, was called the Barefoot Sisters. And they actually ended up hiking it yo-yo. So they southbounded it and then northbounded it.
Okay.
And did so barefoot. Yeah, I mean, they have an incredible
nice.
If you're looking for a good read.
Nice.
But reading these stories of other people that had done it, I think I had a real expectation of like, oh, this, grand adventure and thing that sounded really more interesting and meditative than like there was almost like a monkish component to like backpack and walking through the woods for 5 months.
I love it. And I love, at that stage in life, going between high school and college, I mean, this is the time where as a young person, you are sort of separating from your parents and becoming independent and, learning how to stand on your own feet. And you said you had this impulse to prove, and it was like, this desire for self-reliance. And so, it's like, seems to me like that's exactly the time when you should be pursuing those things. So It makes total sense. But yet, it's not the norm. I'm curious, like your thoughts, because it does seem like it's way more common in Europe and in Australia. And I'm just curious if you have like any knowledge of that difference, or, if you've kind of thought about that at all, and why that might be.
Yeah. I mean, I think that like the US is kind of weird because in some ways, I think we really extend adolescence, where like we have this, very like kind of sheltered high school existence that even really extends into college, where we're like, this is adolescence, and it's separate from the real world. But it feels like, so we extend it and then we like cap it right off. It's like after college, and that's the real world. But I feel like other countries have this more blend where like, it's all the real world. College is the real world. The time that people take time after college to travel more often or take extended years off, I think, abroad. And then also in between high school and college, it feels like there's a more gentle blend between adolescence and adulthood in other countries, where I feel like in the US it's kind of capped as like adolescence extend through college, and then is like up until then it's like kind of still you're still a young kid. Like
yeah, totally. So I think I was telling you before I hit the record button, I had a conversation with ChatGPT on this a little bit, and I found it just that always gets my mind going. But this idea that like in the US, we have sort of this culturally accepted path of high school, college, then get a job. And a lot of it seems to me and ChatGPT that a lot of it's like sort of this achievement oriented focus that we have here, where you just kind of have to progress through the stages, and these worries that if you take a year off, you're going to be potentially falling back. And so I'm just curious if that kind of played in at all, and what, like, now that you've done it, what your sort of comments are on that whole notion.
Yeah. I mean, I think like, college is a great time of life, and you learn so much. You're exposed to all these new ideas, like really intense studying of like the entirety of knowledge of our world. But you really don't have much to like bounce it up against, especially if you were like me and like had, a relatively sheltered suburban childhood.
Right.
So you don't really, it feels like you're like lacking context for the things that you're learning in college. And I think the gap year, like the experiences I had along my gap year, like helped give some like background, help get some life experience to bounce off the kind of very important knowledge that you're getting in college. No matter what you're studying, really.
Yeah, it makes total sense. So could we get into a little bit about what you specifically did for your gap year?
Yeah. So I started off with the southbound through hike of the Appalachian Trail. Graduated, I think it was like, early June in 2011. And then was on the trail June 19th is when I started my hike.
Nice.
So took the train from Charlotte, North Carolina, and then several buses connecting up to Katahdin, and then spent 5 months hiking southbound, finishing mid-November of 2011. So that was part one, and that was like the highlight. That was what I knew I wanted to do. So that was a big part of it. Through the winter, I worked in Charlotte as a busboy. In the spring, I traveled to Italy, where I worked on organic farms through a program called Woofing. And then so where you volunteer on farms in exchange for room and board, and like you kind of used that as a base camp to explore the Italian countryside. And then I came back and worked at a hostel along the Appalachian Trail in Hot Springs, North Carolina, at Elmer's Sunny Bank Inn. And I got to work the northbound season of the 2012 northbound season at that inn. And I had an attic bedroom where you did like work and cook in exchange for $100 a week in room and board. but that was, I mean, talking about the Appalachian Trail in general, like to experience it, first as a thru hiker and then as kind of a community member along the trail town. And then later on, volunteering on trail crews and stuff. I think it's a powerful relationship that goes beyond just like this discrete major event. And a relationship that extends.
100%. And I just have to acknowledge that a through hike of the Appalachian Trail, your experience, did you say woofing? Is that what it's called?
Yep.
Working on farms in Italy, and then working at a hostel along the Appalachian Trail. Like each one of these individually could be podcast episodes of their own, right? Sure. I mean, there's just so much for each one of those, and all of that you packed into this 1 year gap year. And it's amazing, like such experience that I'm sure that you gained in that time. I think it's worth going through each one of them just briefly, just to touch on some highlights. So like Appalachian Trail, I mean, we've had a couple of people on the show that have done that. It's epic. Like it's something I hope to do at some point. Many people go their whole lives like me. Mine will be probably at the end of my career when the kids are out of the house. I'm envious. You got to do it at the beginning. What were some of the highlights of the AT for you?
Man, I mean, I think it was honestly like the simplicity of it, where it felt like a really nice way to live, where like you wake up and your only job is really to walk and to feed yourself. And I think I had kind of gone into it with like kind of grand visions of adventure. Yeah. But what I took from it was more like it is a simple and kind of meditative existence that it is like really, it draws you inward a little bit, but at the same time, like at the same time I had like kind of delusions, maybe of self-reliance going into it. But the truth is like the people you meet along the trail, that you hike alongside, or like in the trail town, the community members that provide trail magic or rides to and from places, like it feels like this community is kind of carrying you through this adventure. And this whole time you just have day after day to just kind of be in yourself. And as an 18-year-old and turn 19 on the trail, like it was a remarkably powerful experience for like identity formation, I think.
What did you experience in terms of like other ages of people that you were hiking with or hanging with or meeting along the way?
Yeah, there were maybe a couple other 18-year-olds on the trail, but mostly there were a lot of retirees.
Yep.
That were coming in, people going through big life transitions. So divorces, job changes, lots of recent college graduates, which, I met people with degrees from kind of small liberal arts colleges and lots of college debt that were having trouble kind of justifying their decisions like post-college. And that informed some of my decisions. All right, well, I'm not going to go to, school in Vermont. I'm going to stay in state and study something that I felt like was giving me some marketable skills. So yeah, it was kind of across the board. And I think that was part of it is, as a teenager, when you're used to being treated like a kid, and then on the trail, you have like people, I'm hiking alongside teachers that are taking a break from or sabbatical from their career, and we're all kind of on an even playing field.
Yes.
So a good part of that. Yeah.
I love that so much. So you said something that I want to go one level deeper on. It was just beautiful. You said the Appalachian Trail was a simple, meditative existence that draws you in. Can you take us there? Just what was that like? What does that feel like?
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to like romance it too much because there's some like, there's some tedium to it, I guess. But yeah, it does. I think it is, you're spending 8 to 12 hours a day, just kind of walking along, and, you're in this green tunnel. There's beautiful views. You're sweating up hills. You're just kind of existing in this like very simple way, because it's not like you're worried about bills or figuring out where the next yeah, it's just you're just walking, and at the end of the day, like you might have an idea of where you want to camp that night, but it doesn't really matter. It's you get tired, you get stopped, and then do it again the next day, and rinse and repeat for 5 months. And I think that life is complicated, and to have a reset like that where you can just kind of focus on the kind of the bare necessities is really refreshing and kind of a good grounding moment.
Yeah. So talk to me about the part where it draws you in. Are you saying it draws you into yourself?
Yeah, I think it does, because I mean, and to this day, like, I think that, we all have these internal monologues, and sometimes they're productive and sometimes they're not. But you can really just let your mind wander in a way when you're walking, then I don't think is necessarily possible in like other extended forms of being. Some people, I guess, can just like sit down and empty their mind, and that's great. That takes a lot of practice. For me, I think that like walking makes that much more approachable and much easier. Yeah.
All right. So you beautifully distilled a 5-month through hike on the AT in like 2 minutes, maybe a little bit longer, but let's do the same with your Italy woofing experience.
Yeah, for sure. So I was woofing for this young couple they were kind of restarting. It was like, so at the time, Italy was kind of experiencing this like rural decline where people were, all moving to these urban areas, and these kind of small mountain towns were kind of falling into disrepair. And they had and this couple was part of like kind of a back to land hippie movement that was occurring. And so they had this, beautiful, like hundreds of years old homestead, then fall into disrepair. They moved into it. They were going to build a tea farm there and try and eke out an existence, raising their young 4-year-old. So scenic, right in the Dolomites. There were like shepherds roaming the hills nearby still. And it was a beautiful, like I'd go in and just like essentially just pull weeds and weed during the morning. And then for the afternoons were mine. So I'd wander in the mountains some more. And then on the weekends, I would go off and do trips, experience like Venice or Florence, and then travel. My girlfriend at the time was studying abroad in Italy, which was a factor in trying to explore there. And so she was doing school during the week. And then we would kind of meet up as we had breaks and explore together, and got to see some beautiful places. Yeah.
What were some of your key learnings from that experience in Italy?
Yeah, I think that the couple that I was working for, they really were showing me a kind of just a different way of living. And I think that's kind of a theme is I growing up in this kind of like sheltered suburban community, you have kind of limited examples of like ways to live. And throughout my travels, like whether it was, the people I met along the AT, the hostel owners or workers that were along the trail, or like this couple who had done like, had extended successful careers as like humanitarian water experts. And we're kind of like bringing it back home. They're like, hey, this isn't working. So we need to like create something more local, more holistic versus this like busy international travel heavy existence. So I think they did a great service to me, like by showing me just like what does, we sat down for dinner each night together. And I played with their kid. We had language barriers, but their granddad lived with them, and we would play chess, even though we couldn't speak to each other. And it was just like a real lesson and other ways to live.
Yes. I love that. I want to come back to that as we kind of finish the whole gap year, but this idea of like, because I know you grew up in Charlotte. I'm very familiar. Obviously, I live there, and how life is different from Charlotte to these different places that you went. But let's finish with coming back to the Appalachian Trail and working on it as a service provider, really.
Yeah. Elmer Sunny Bank in Hot Springs, North Carolina it's a legend along the trail. I think he got there in the late 70s, early 80s, and came through as a hiker, and then was like, this place is magical. It was just a bed and breakfast. Eventually was gifted this beautiful old house, and has operated it still to this day. He operates it as a bed and breakfast. And so his background, he was a college professor at Duke University way back in the day. He opened up the first vegetarian restaurant in Durham, North Carolina, back in called Sometime. So he was a phenomenal cook. And he operated as like a family style B&B. So it was beautiful. Like mornings, you were doing housework, laundry, whatever. They had a nice garden. And then from like 2 p.m. on, you were like in the kitchen cooking up these like really extravagant meals. And then we would sit down with whoever was staying with us that night for like a family style dinner. And most of the time that was hikers. Like they had ran really compelling hiker specials, and were literally the Appalachian Trail runs out their front doors. So that was a big part of it. But also, college professors that Elmer knew, there were like places that would host workshops, like mycology workshops were there. We had some distillers from 1792 distillery one time, I remember. So it was kind of this just table full of people that were vacationing or seeking something in Hot Springs, North Carolina. And Elmer was a great conversationalist. So you were always in for a good conversation.
Yeah. And I'm assuming that you had the opportunity to interact with hikers that were coming through. So
yeah, absolutely.
What was that like for you, having been on the other side?
I loved it, especially catching like northbounders at that time. Because they're like, a couple hundred, I think it's 270 miles ish into their trail. So they're kind of just getting the rhythms of things.
Yeah.
And as a southbounder, when you're starting as northbounders are finishing. So they're like grizzled. You kind of have the reverse experience where like you're like brand new trying to figure out how this all works, and they've got like 1,800 miles under their belt. So it was a little refreshing. It was kind of fun to be like, see the northbounders and they're like brand new, still figuring stuff out phase. And yeah, I mean, the trail just brings people from all over the world, like different paths of life. And it was also cool because you got to see people that were like just doing it for a few weeks or, whatever time they had. So, yeah, the breadth of people that came through that house is just incredible.
And I got to believe they were appreciative of your experience, especially like anybody that's just doing it for the first time. They were probably grateful to be able to have your experience having finished the whole thing.
I like to think, so there was me and one other guy. Elmer constantly had like 1 to 3 former thru hikers working for him. And I like to think that we helped people kind of along their path. Yeah. Yeah.
So talk to me. So that's kind of brings us to the end of your gap year, really, like working at that hostel. Like, talk to me a little bit about what changed inside of you in terms of mindset, like, and maybe we can even talk about like coming back to growing up in a place like Charlotte, North Carolina, and then going out into the great big world and seeing all these other places, and how all of that sort of changed you in the course of a year.
Yeah. I mean, I think we talked about, but like just meeting the amount of like the breadth of people and lifestyles and getting exposed to that, I think broadened my horizons of like what is possible. And then I honestly think that like having those life experiences and all that context to like bounce off of the college material that you're learning, where you're like reading about I don't know, urban farming. And then it's like, okay, yeah, we operated a farm from in Italy, or like helps the get Elmer's garden off the ground, or what have you. Like you like build real life experience to like bounce off of the material you're learning in college, which I think is really valuable. And then the other thing is, I think like it is a real privilege to like cross something as major as the Appalachian Trail off of a bucket list at such a young age. Like just to have that that sense of accomplishment and that confidence booster of being like, this was a life dream and I got to check one off, it really early. I think it gave me the confidence and the audacity to like kind of do other big things later on.
100%. So I'm curious, like along the way, so before you left, one of the stipulations was you got admitted into college. You deferred, but then you changed your mind and decided to go somewhere else. So I'm curious, like when you applied before your gap year, did you have in mind what you were going to study?
I had no idea. I mean, that was kind of part of the whole thing, was that I was not sure what I wanted to do. And, I think that I put, partly because of that kind of culture that we've been talking about with the US, is like, I felt like that was really important. I felt like I needed to have that figured out before I got to college, and I had no idea. So I was an open book. And then, like you said, I applied to Appalachian State actually initially. Went there for my freshman year and then transferred into Carolina at UNC, where I finished my degree. And I ended up studying environmental studies and biology, which was like a whole breadth of coursework that it really like, I changed my major like 6 times during undergrad. So I still didn't know what I wanted to do, but I ended up with coursework that I think really informs my worldview and gave me some tools that were really helpful.
Yeah. I mean, it seems like environmental science in particular, like aligns pretty closely to the experiences that you had on the Appalachian Trail. So I'm curious, like, if there was anything specific that happened during your gap year that guided your decision towards what you would study, even if it took you a little while to get there, like, how did it guide you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that there's like this interaction between the environment and people that is really at the core is what's interesting to me. And whether that's like from a recreation point of view, which is a lot of what we talk, like people that hike and bike and trail run, whether that's like more utility, like how we grow our food, or how it brings us into community with each other. And like when we spend time outdoors, that does create like a bond. Like there is like when you go on an adventure with somebody, that's like that can be a real relationship builder. Mm-hmm. So all those things have been super interesting to me and continue to be interesting to me. So, yeah.
So kind of going back to when you're making the decision to go on a gap year, now that you know what you know, there might be a concern that if I take a year off, I'm going to fall behind. Or worse, from a parent's perspective, if my kid goes and does this gap year, what if they just love this life so much and decide they're not going to go to college at all, or they just, they don't come home? What would you say to people that have those thoughts?
Yeah, I think that people considering a gap year, high schoolers or parents of high schoolers that might be looking at it, like, I think we would all benefit from kind of breaking down this kind of discrete stage of life and letting it all blend a little bit more, right? So, giving, I do really think the life experience from most gap years, like, is invaluable and like really can inform the stuff you learn in college and augment it in a way that's like, otherwise you just have this like bunch of information that you don't really know what to do with. And I think conversely too, is like, I don't think we need to like end college and then lose that mindset altogether either,
Yeah.
right? We could all benefit from like having that college mindset a little bit more, where we're trying new things, we're learning a lot, we're experimenting, and bringing that farther into adulthood, which I think other cultures do a better job.
Yeah, and I think by using the term gap year, it's much better than saying I'm taking a year off. It by no means is a year off. I mean, you're gaining so much experience. So some of it is just in the language that we use, I think.
Totally. It's all the real world, quote unquote, it's whether you're in school or traveling or working, like it's all just life. So not much of a gap, really.
Yeah, for sure. I'm curious for you, where did your adventure spirit come from? Because it takes a lot for, an 18-year-old decide they're just going to go off and hike the Appalachian Trail by themselves and travel to Italy. And, obviously there was a mindset that came in.
Yeah. Like I said, I drew a lot from books, but also I think like there was as a freshman in high school, I did a 2-week-long North Carolina outward bound school course.
Yes.
That was really pivotal. I know you're on the board in COBS, I think, or maybe the Unity program.
Yeah. The Charlotte group, the Charlotte advisory.
Yeah. So that, I think that talking about like exposure to different ways of living and like just the potential of what's out there really opened my world up and taught myself that I could do hard things too. I think that's something that is common for a lot of people that go through outward bound is, you're learning how to travel in really hard terrain, how to navigate yourself, how to feed yourself. So I think it was, and one of my instructors was an AT thru hiker. So I think that awesome. Might have been the first seed.
Okay. There you go.
For the Appalachian Trail later on.
Yeah. We got to have mentors. Is there anything that happened on your outward bound trip that really sticks out to you?
Yeah. I think that, honestly, like it was a great experience, like all around. I think the piece that actually like got me thinking about, how we interact with each other, how to live, like all these things, was actually the final night when we were staying with and on their base camp sort of, and watching how the crew and the instructors like lived cooperatively together and worked together so well. Like it makes sense that, they're teaching these things, but to see them like kind of work in practice.
Yes.
And it was such a demonstration of like competence and cooperativity.
Cooperation. Yeah. I love that. I love that. It's awesome.
That I think was really impactful to see as like as a freshman in high school. Yeah.
I mean, it's a life-changing experience for sure. And obviously helped feed into kind of what came next for you. I guess I have to ask, like, kind of coming back to like your college experience, like do you ever think about if you hadn't done the gap year, like what would college have been like for you?
Yeah. I think it would have been tough for me specifically. Like, I'm not sure that, I was ready for I think that a lot of me needed kind of to break out into a lack of structure.
Yeah.
Before I could go back into something that was like as structured learning as college was. So I think I could have muscled through it, but I was eager to kind of break free of something or rebel against something. And I think that the gap year gave me that release and then like freed me to like go back into a more structured learning environment.
Yeah. So here's a good rubber meets the road. Let's fast forward. Like, suppose someday you're guiding a young person, maybe it's your child or maybe it's somebody else.
Sure.
But would you encourage them to take a gap year?
Yeah, I think absolutely. I mean, I think that it comes back to that context. And I think that, as a society or whatever, we don't give our high schoolers enough real world experience, quote unquote. And I think that makes it really hard for them to absorb the material that we then ask them to absorb in college. So getting some miles on the like on life and trying to meet people and break out of their zone, I think is these are all good outcomes from gap year.
I love it. So we've had a pretty full conversation here, but I think it's important that we kind of fast forward. So this all, your decision was something like 15 years ago. You took a gap year, hiked the Appalachian Trail, went to Italy, did some amazing things, and then you went and got a degree and entered the workforce. But let's fast forward now, 15 years later. What does life look like for you, and how did those early experiences shape the person that you are today?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm living in Salt Lake City, Utah, just south of downtown. Surrounded by the Wasatch Mountains, which are 11,000 foot peaks. I get to bike pretty much everywhere. And it's all kind of culminated in this kind of like my theory or whatever, it to balance these like kind of bigger discrete adventures with these more sustainable with quote unquote regular life or whatever, like micro adventure touch points, things that kind of keep that energy up. So that's, for me, that's like, setting goals. Like there's Mount Grandeur, which is like, 10 miles away. Try and do that once a month. I can trace it through the season, winter, it's, got micro spikes and you're in the snow, and the summer you're sweating and you see the fall. So it's like a temporal touch point as well as like still pretty out there, still a big mountain. So it still get that feeling of being out there. Biking everywhere, try and bike like 3,000 miles a year. And this is kind of like just who I like. I like to have kind of discrete, tangible stuff.
Yeah.
That is like, weekly, daily things. And then intermixing that with like some bigger adventures or efforts. I sent you a picture from the Utah Mixed Epic.
Yes, you did.
Which was cool. Recently, I feel like it's been bike packing as like my bigger adventures, but that's like from downtown Salt Lake City, 150-mile, 22,000 feet bike packing route that kind of circumnavigates the Wasatch Range and some of the canyons surrounding.
Yeah. So clearly you've taken those early experiences that you've had, getting away from Charlotte and getting out into the wilderness and doing these epic experiences. And now, like, not only are you doing like bigger adventures, but you've talked to me about like incorporating the adventure into your everyday life. But that's, even just on the personal side, but you've also kind of incorporated it into your professional life. So talk to us a little bit about the professional side over the last 10 years.
Yeah, absolutely. I studied environmental studies in undergrad, but throughout that time I was working at like a local gear shop called Townsend Birchman Company and Carborough. They're no longer in existence, unfortunately, but a great little shop. And through that, got kind of sucked into the outdoor industry. And when I moved out to Salt Lake City, I started working for backcountry.com. Big e-commerce, REI. And there, I built a career in merchandise planning, so sales forecasting and inventory management. But really what I liked about it was the community of people that I got to work with, who were all
outdoor people are the coolest.
They're so good. And, I pretty much learned how to ski when I moved out here and had, a variety of mentors that I got to work with as well from a skiing perspective. And, big, nobody's looking at you funny if you're waking up at 5 a.m. to do a trail run before work or whatever. So, phenomenal. The outdoor industry is just like a phenomenal community of people. And I met some of my best friends who've been through work in that way. But I also just quit that job in July and going back to school for urban planning at the University of Utah. And for me, I think that's, it's really just like realigning with the environmental studies background and what I studied there, and that idea of like the environment and people, and how do we like increase this quality of life for people. And obviously I believe a lot of that comes with access to recreation, access to green space, and being able to like scale that kind of adventure, the micro adventure use, or like the use of these trails, as we bring more people into this tent of doing really good things for ourselves.
Yeah. Austin, one thing that I've noticed about you is like you do have a really strong internal compass that sort of, and like that guides you and that you've followed. And I'm just curious, like, as we kind of wrap up here, if you think about like all of your experiences from Outward Bound forward, how you've been able to kind of tap into that compass and be true to it. Because so many people get distracted and pulled in different ways and, following what other people say they should be doing. You seem to have been very focused on what matters to you. I'm just curious if you could comment on that.
Yeah. I mean, I think, it comes a lot with defining your values and then acting accordingly. But I think like for me, and checking in, because it's not always balanced in one direction or another. But if you know where that balance point is, at least you can kind of correct as you figure it out. So I know my day-to-day, like it's moving my body with people in the mountains or in these grand landscapes. So I think that adventuring, like going on these big adventures, there's like, for me, it's such a community and social aspect of it. Whereas I love like getting to know people through that, and then sustaining that through these like kind of micro adventure touch points. I think it's something maybe we don't do as good of a job with as an outdoor recreation community, is like, we're all hyping up like the big, month-long treks. But equally as important is like the trail run every Wednesday where you show up with a couple of your buddies and get it done.
I mean, you just dropped some gold, and I feel like we need a whole nother episode for it, but I want to go back to it. So you just clearly stated your values, moving my body with people in the mountains. So we're talking about like, physical movement, right? We're talking about relationships with other people, and we're talking about getting into nature. Yeah. I mean, anything more you can share on those three values as we kind of wrap up here? That was magic.
No, I mean, I think that's, I think that there's, there's ways we can make this stuff easier or harder for ourselves to do, right? Like, for me, I think, having goals to like just bike everywhere or like bike more often, like having discrete goals that are like biking, whereas like biking is not the goal, but that helps enable the other ones where it's like being in nature, being with people, moving my body, right? Like, where we live, like, choosing to live in a place that's bikeable to the trailhead or to get in so you can do a trail run in the middle of the week. I think is that as well.
I love it. Rapid fire here. I'm going to put you on the spot. So each one of those things, like there's a core element of our beings that touch with each one of those. So like moving my body, getting it, like being around other people and being in nature. Like, how would you distill each one of those things? What does moving your body do for you in your core?
Man, I think it is like exercise, and exercise can be, whatever for so many different people. But for me, it is like, it's the most fundamental medicine that we have as far as like having a healthy mindset. And like, if I'm a little bit like a puppy, if I don't get my daily or weekly, I get cooped up and then I start spiraling quickly. So for me, moving the body is like, we're meant to move, even if it's just walking. It's like we're meant to move around this earth.
I love it. Being with people.
I think we live in a world that is, increasingly pushing us to be isolated from each other. And we, can hear about all the the horrible things going on from far away. And it feels so like that feels like such a powerful force that I react against it entirely. And I think that everything has to be lean into being pro-social. Like if there's an opportunity where you could do something alone or do something with somebody else, do it with somebody else, because it is core to our being to be in community with each other. And the world makes that harder. So we need to work really hard to make sure that we're in community with each other, whether that's for a run or carpooling or, saying hey to your neighbor. Like it's all in that same vein.
Love it. And last but not least, nature, connecting with nature. Yeah.
I mean, I think that these landscapes do something for us and to us, where they're, there's Mark Sundin, who's a great author and just released a bunch of essays called Delusions and Grandeur. And it's all about kind of the New West and the essays are kind of go all over the place. But one of the themes is that, existing or like taking in these grand landscapes, they affect us in some way. They make us feel small or big or insignificant. And it's a constant reminder of scale, I think, is living in Utah and being is big skies, big everything, and time is where a blip. Yeah. And then also on the kind of the micro level, where it's just like just being in a park or next to a tree, like it does wonders for you.
I think the gap year was a good thing for you.
I appreciate that.
So I'm curious, we're talking about a very specific time between high school and college for you, but what about people that missed that boat? What about like anybody? Like, can you talk about like in the intentional pause? I mean, is that something that anybody can do at any time?
Yeah. I mean, I think that's definitely something I believe, but like I said, I think we put these chapters of our lives into such discrete boundaries when they don't need to be or what have you. Like, and it doesn't have to be, 5 months on the Appalachian Trail. For me, I've found a lot of utility in like these little micro adventures. Like, let's just, I did a year where I just tried to like camp outside once a month, once a month. And that led to some like really silly things where you're just like in your backyard or whatever, but also it opened the doors for something. I did I'm never going to drive my car less than 5 miles. So any trip under 5 miles, I'm going to figure out another way to get there.
Love that.
And it was like a whole new world opened up. And so I think like we can have the attitude of these like little tweaks that, aren't as grandiose as like a 5-month trek on the Appalachian Trail, but make our life a little bit more interesting.
I love it. Thank you so much for all the sharing. It's been awesome. I'm curious if people want to like find out more or get in touch with you or connect, like what's the best way to do that?
Yeah. Email or Instagram, always. If anybody's in Salt Lake City, wants to go on a trail run or a bike ride, or just need some tips about what to do, where to go, I'd love to chat, love to meet up.
Love it.
And yeah.
You have such a fun and epic story. You kind of have listened to your own voice inside that's called you to adventure and uniquely have actually followed it starting at a young age, which is pretty awesome. And I'm pretty confident that at some point Hollywood is going to pick up on your story and they're going to want to make a movie about you. So I'm curious, when they do, who's going to be the Hollywood actor that's going to play you in your movie?
Thankfully, you gave me a heads up on this question, or else I could be scrambling right now. But you know what? I think Timothée Chalamet is killing it right now. And, he's got kind of the right take. Like, I think he could do a cool hair thing. And, he would make you look good on screen.
That would be amazing. Yeah, I love that one. What's the movie going to be called?
This is the harder one, I think. We'll call it Figuring It Out As I Go. Because
nice.
that's what I feel like I'm doing. Is I'm just figuring it out as I go.
Figuring It Out As I Go, starring Timothy Chalamet. I love it. Man, this has been such a fun conversation. I'm so thankful that we had a chance to spend some time together. So thank you for that. And for those listening, I hope you've been inspired today as much as I have. Hope Austin's story has encouraged you to listen to the voice inside that calls you to adventure, because we want to hear your story next. If you have a story to tell or just need a nudge to create one, please send me an email. We'd also appreciate it if you'd help us spread the word by leaving a review and sharing or tagging Inspire Campfire in your social media. And until next time, I want to encourage you to get outside. Thanks for listening. Austin, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you, Scott. It's been fun.